Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had a great summer. We're back from our summer hiatus. I hope you missed us. I certainly missed doing this. I always have a lot of fun talking about personal finance. So today's topic is it time to rebalance my 401k? If you're listening to this, it's probably because you are active participating into your 401k. So I just wanted to say, first of all, congratulations. Very likely this means that you have a 401k, that you're participating in it, and the title caught your attention, which means that you're paying attention to your finances. So congratulations for that. So I want to talk to you about rebalancing your 401k, and I want to talk about what it is, also why is it important, how often you should do it, and then some things to look out for and mistakes to avoid. So it's going to be a pretty quick episode, but I feel like, now that it's approaching the third quarter already of the year, it's a good time to start looking into things like this. So let's get right into it. So what is rebalancing? When you first set up your 401k investment options, unless your employer already put you into something predetermined and you left it as is, they usually ask you where you would like for your money to be invested. You usually start zero, right? When you get a new job, maybe you roll over assets from a prior employer, but ultimately you have to choose where this money is going to be invested. A lot of the times you're going to get some sort of menu of options, and they're going to have typically mutual funds in different categories. For example, stocks, bonds, real estate. Some employers offer like a secure option, which is kind of like cash, maybe some sort of guaranteed fund that pays a very low rate of return, but it doesn't lose money. But ultimately, you have to decide, where do I want this money to go into? So based on your savings goals, your time horizon, your risk tolerance, you would usually then choose your target allocation. So for example, let's say you decide, okay, I want to invest 75% of my money in stocks and 25% of my money into bonds, right? So you would choose an allocation that is 75-25. Some funds already come predetermined like this, where you can have an asset allocation. Typically not that common in 401ks. You might see this more in your outside investments. But what you may see in your 401k is a target date fund, which may work similarly, where you might see a target date 2045, target date 2050. This means that the portfolio is going to be invested as if you're going to retire somewhere around that target date. And when you click on the blue hyperlink to look at that particular fund, it'll usually go to you can go to a tab that says composition, and it'll show you the breakdown of that portfolio. So it might currently show you like, okay, this portfolio is 78% stocks, 22% bonds, or something like that. So if that's close to your desired target allocation, you would just choose one of those target date funds. So that's an easy way to make sure that your portfolio is actually rebalancing all the time, because the fund is going to do it for you. Now, if you want to take a little bit more of an active approach, because the target allocation funds usually tend to be more conservative the closer you get to your retirement age. And some people may not necessarily want that. They might want to keep the allocation at, let's say, 75-25 for most of the time. And that's not going to be the case with a target date fund, because it's actually going to rebalance and get more conservative as time goes by. But initially, that might be one of the quickest ways and less most passive ways for you to just keep your portfolio rebalancing on its own. Now, if you are choosing the individual funds, however, which a lot of people do, then you have to keep in mind that at some point, with the market going up and down, you're going to have your portfolio get out of balance because movements in the market. So to give you an example, let's say, like the prior example, you started at 75% stock, 25% bond, but the market did really well in the past year or the past 2 years, and you haven't touched it. It's very possible that your portfolio might be now 90% stock and 10% bonds, which means that you are now out of balance when you compare it to your initial target allocation. So you have to keep that in mind, because Why is that important? Because now you may be taking more risk than is necessary. And the same can happen the other way, where you might be too conservative as well. If the market went down for the past year or so, or a certain period of time, then your portfolio might be out of whack the opposite way. If you wanted a 75-25 portfolio, you might go down to a 60-40, and that may not be your desired target allocation. So you want to go back to the 75-25, which means you have to rebalance your portfolio. So we're going to get into exactly how to do that within your 401k. It's fairly easy, but this is the importance, because as your portfolio gets out of whack, right, out of balance, you're going to either be taking more risk or you're going to be taking less risk, because your initial target allocation is no longer going to be the case as time goes by. So you definitely want to be taking more risk. When you look at, I've read some articles looking at the importance of rebalancing. A lot of the times, some portfolios that did not rebalance and were taking excess risk didn't beat the portfolio that was rebalanced by a lot. So one recent article I read was probably less than 2% difference for that period of time, which wasn't a long time. So you don't want to take too much risk for just an additional slightly better performance, right? So this is something that's really important, and this is why you want to make sure that you rebalance, at least once a year. Which is my next question: is how often should you do it? Well, there's several different ways of doing it. One of the easiest ways is for you to do it based on time. So you could decide to do it. Some people that look at their accounts very often, they might do it quarterly. Some people might do it every bi-yearly, right? So twice a year. And then some people may actually just do it once a year. But I would say at the very least, do it once a year, because you don't want to let it go for too long and your portfolio to get too out of balance to the point where you're taking too much risk or not taking enough based on all the criteria that we talked about, which is your savings goal, time horizon, and risk tolerance. The other way of doing it would be based on when your portfolio gets out of balance. And you can do this by setting certain rules. It's more complicated if you're doing it manually, because for example, people like myself, financial advisors that manage other people's monies, we have tools we can put in place and say, okay, if this particular portfolio gets out of, they call it drift, it drifts 5% from its intended target, then automatically trigger a rebalance. And what that means is you're going to have a sell, right? So somebody that wanted to be, just to keep it simple, let's say you want it to be 50-50, right? 50% stock, 50% bonds, and the portfolio goes up to 60-40, then you have to sell the 10% in stocks that you have addition, right? And then take that and buy the bond so that you can come back down to a 50-50. So if you're doing this yourself and your provider doesn't allow you to have a drift, which I don't think a lot of 401k providers do, some do, but it's not that common, especially if you're working with a smaller employer, you may not have that option. So you would have to keep track of this yourself, maybe in an Excel spreadsheet, and do manual calculations to see, okay, my stocks are 5% drifting more than my initial target allocations, and I have to sell some. It's very involved. I wouldn't recommend you do it that way. If you happen to have the tool available within your 401k plan where you can set certain drift targets, fine. But I would say at the very least, do it just once a year. Now, how do you do it, right? It's not as complicated as it may sound. And also, some things to keep in mind. This is something that you just log into your 401k. Most employers give you the option of logging into some sort of account, right, through the custodian. Typically, you will click on investments or portfolio or something like that, and then you will see options for rebalancing. And then usually we'll bring up the menu of options again. It'll show your current allocation, all the funds that you have and what percentages are invested in what. And then you just basically choose your new allocation based on your new target date. Now, one thing that is very important to keep in mind, you want to rebalance within asset classes as well, because let's say if you wanted 75% stock, you might have also picked a certain amount of percentages to go into different types of stocks, because you have large cap, small cap, and so on, right? So you also want to make sure that you're rebalancing those, right? This is why it's so important to work with a financial planner, because even if they're not managing your 401k, they can still advise you on how to do this based on the conversations you've had with your advisor. They know you, they know your risk profile, your tolerance, your goals, your time horizon, and they'll help you make informed decisions, right? So if you don't have a financial planner and you're saving for your retirement, highly recommended that you also involve them in this part of the process, even if they don't manage your account, because they'll be able to help you with this. So it's that simple. Once you choose your new percentages, you just hit submit, you get a confirmation. You might get a confirmation email as well. And then the next time that the market is open, usually the account will just rebalance. And then you just got to do that again the following year. Let's say if you choose to do it just once a year. So it's that simple. Now, some questions. Does it cost money to rebalance? The answer is no. When you log into your account, if you move funds around within your 401k, there are no charges involved. If you have some, that'll be very rare. I've never seen a 401k plan that will actually charge you money for switching funds around. I've never seen it. So it doesn't cost you any money. Another question I've gotten is, are there any tax consequences of doing this? And the answer is no, because you're moving funds from within the 401k. You're not liquidating to take money out of the 401k. If you were taking a withdrawal, then yes, there will be tax consequences that we have to talk about. But if you just move in funds within the account without taking it out, that's completely fine. You can sell all your positions, you can buy new things, and it still does not trigger a taxable event. So those are some of the advantages of doing that, right? Additional advantages of doing that. Now, some things to look out for that I've seen as well. When you rebalance, usually you have two separate areas where you would go to tell the provider of what you intend to do. One area is rebalancing the existing investments that you have. Now, when you do that, it's only going to take the funds that are currently in your account and then reallocate them to whatever new target allocation you chose, right? Based on the percentages that you entered in the boxes. What it does not do is change where your future contributions are going to go. So this is very important, and this is something that is often overlooked. So one of the easiest ways for you to make sure that your portfolio maintains very close allocation is for you to make sure that your contributions are invested according to your target allocation, because it's not one and the same. So in other words, you can have your portfolio at 75-25 allocation, but your future contributions could actually be going to a 100% stock fund or a target date fund. So it's something you want to keep in mind. So when you're done rebalancing, then go back and click on contributions and make sure that you change those as well to make sure that the contributions are invested accordingly. Now, some people may not want to necessarily go through the hassle of like selling other stuff or some stuff to rebalance a portfolio. Another way of doing it is just, but it's also, again, more time consuming and more involved, where you can change the future contributions of your allocations in order to gradually put more money towards whatever is underweight in essence, right? So if you know that your bonds are too low and you need to buy more, you can just choose to put all of your future contributions towards the bonds in order to bring it back up. But again, it's something that you have to keep track of, and it's probably too involved. So I would recommend you just try to automate things as much as possible. So do it once a year and just do it based on the target allocation, and make sure the contributions going forward are also invested to match that target allocation. That'll be the easiest way to rebalance your portfolio. Another thing I recommend too is keep in mind that as you get older, your risk profile may change. So you want to make sure that you're not being too aggressive, especially if you're nearing retirement and you need to start withdrawing from those funds. And again, this is why it's very important to work with a financial planner, because they're going to look at your risk tolerance, your goals, and then all of your resources, including your 401k and your other sources of income and any other asset, to help you make informed decisions. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind, because your risk tolerance at 25 may not be the same when you're 60, right? So you want to make sure that the investments within your 401k are according to your risk tolerance, which may change over time, which is the concept behind those target date funds, basically assuming that you're going to be more conservative as you get closer to retirement. And then make yourself a recurrent reminder. I think that One great way, which is one of the things I do with my clients to remember to do this, is usually during open enrollment, because you're already getting that email from your employer say, hey, open enrollment is here. It's time to choose your health insurance plan or confirm that you want to keep the one you have, your dependent care, your flexible spending accounts, health savings accounts, all that stuff. So why not add the 401k to the mix and say, okay, you know what? Since I'm already logging in here anyway to my employer portal and I'm dealing with all these benefits, why not also then rebalance my 401k? And this is something that, that way you can allow that to trigger the reminder, or just put a reminder on your calendar or your phone to do this. At the very least, I would say once a year. So don't go too long without rebalancing your 401k so that you're not taking unnecessary risk. You want to make sure that you continue to invest according to your original target allocation. And so it doesn't cost you money and it's not a taxable event, then there's really no downside to it. You want to make sure you stay on top of that. So thank you for tuning in. Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up soon, so stay tuned for a great lineup of guests that I'm going to have in the next couple of episodes. And as always, if you have any questions, send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.